Hey everyone, Uncle Jesse here. Today we're going to be 3D printing and painting this zombie Captain America model by IR Sculpts. To get things started, I'm going to need my own zombie flesh tone resin by mixing in a little bit of Elgu blue, white, and alcohol ink. Started with that blue and white mixture, mixing it together to pale it out a bit, then adding a few drops of that alcohol ink, thoroughly mix it again, and then adding in a few more drops as we go, then deciding we probably need a good bit more, fill up that vat. Then after thoroughly mixing it together, I decided things weren't zombie looking enough, so I added in a few drops of yellow alcohol ink before we print it on the Mars 3. Speaking of, Elgu is the sponsor for today's video. I'll be printing here directly on the Elgu Mars 3 and utilizing a number of Elgu's products throughout today's video. The Elgu Mars 3 is an amazing resin 3D printer that it prints extremely fast and accurate. I am loving the details that I'm able to get off of this machine, and it is quickly becoming one of my favorite resin 3D printers to use around the office. If you're interested in more information about any of the Elgu products that I'll be showing off in today's video, you'll find links in the description box down below. Now look at that amazing print. I also recently installed the Wham Bam Flex Plate in the Mars 3. I love popping prints off that build plate. Then it was time to print the base for this model. After seeing those prints, I decided I want to print this nice and big, so I busted out the Elgu Saturn and printed this as large as I could at 160% scale. I also printed the base on the Neptune 2 and this Uncle Jessy gunmetal PLA. Then it was time to give all the prints an IPA bath in the Mercury X bundle. This helps clean off all of the prints of any excess resin. Then the prints go in some hot water, which makes removing those supports oh so satisfying. Then I got some hot glue and started assembling our little guy here to see what he looks like. Very, very creepy, but oh so clean. Now it's time for some painting, and I decided to start with the base. So I taped it up, grabbed some of this Rust-Oleum sand-like spray paint, and went to town on it. Here's a quick comparison of the scales of the two different busts. You can see the one from the Saturn is pretty large. Before I can paint the resin busts, I need to cure them under UV light. Here, I'm just sanding down some of the areas where supports were in contact with the prints and doing some more UV curing on those larger prints. It's time to tape up this thing. There is a lot of tape going on in this project. Very carefully going around as best I can around the edges because we are going to be painting the top of this cap helmet. I'm also taping off the shield so I can paint that as well. Gonna hit everything with a little bit of this Rust-Oleum automotive primer, which makes everything nice and flat, even surface for me to start applying paint to. It looks pretty good, but before we can get started on the painting, I do need to tape off that A. So I'm gonna carefully apply some tape around that A and bust out the airbrush. I'm gonna be using this blue airbrush paint to start applying it all over the helmet here in a whole bunch of different coats to get to the tone that I'm looking for. I wanted a nice, rich, deep blue that I could then muddy up later on. I'll also apply that blue directly to the shield where the star is. Now that I've got the helmet painted, it's time to open up the mouth area so that we can try an airbrush inside that mouth. So I'm mixing together some different colors here, reds, pinks, blues to get a little bit of a fleshy tone for the inside of the mouth. Very carefully airbrushing here. I'm not very good with an airbrush, but I think this turned out pretty decently here. And I made a huge mess as well. Airbrushing out a few more details like the nose here. This is looking better than I expected. Now it's time to paint that red on the shield. Again, just using some red airbrush paint here and going pretty liberally all around the shield. Let's add on some more tape because we need to start painting on some of the details of that helmet. Like the brown leather here around the outside of the helmet, again, I'm just using a whole bunch of different Citadel brown paints for this process. And I'm using some Citadel washes to brush on and wipe off to get a nice gritty, grimy look for the body piece here. Adding some more texturing and details around the side of the mask. Then using a little bit of acrylic black paint, we're going to add some details to the shield. Here we're focusing on the rings all around the shield. Again, with the washes, I'm going to be applying this all over the helmet. I really want this to be grimed and dirtied up. Don't want one flat uniform color. I want this to look like it's been through an apocalypse. Even more washes. Yeah, I just used a whole bunch of different shades and went over this multiple times. And here just using that paper towel to add a little bit of weathering by brushing hard against the helmet. Got to make sure the front of the helmet's all grimed up as well. Then using a chip brush with some brown and black paints going all over the helmet and body just to help really dirty this up a good bit. I applied the same technique to the base and the shield portions of this print. Looking really dirty now. Then with some dry white Citadel paint, I started going through and adding accents and chip marks all around the helmet. This again helps with some of the highlighting and bringing out the contrast of that helmet. Now it's time to untape that A and get to work on it. So I'm using a combination of different paints here, just brushing it on and muddying it up, adding a little bit of a black and brown acrylic to this, as well as some of that red wash to it that I'm going to wipe away. Then using a little bit of silver rub and buff to help make that A pop a good bit more. Now we need to remove some of the tape so that we can start working on the details around the face. Ooh, looking so creepy, loving this. Using some of the washes to add details to the nostril and some of the folds around the face. And then taking some of that paint and applying it inside the mouth. Again, we don't want one solid tone, we want lots of variation and details to pop here. Next, I'm going to use some of this stone off-white paint for the teeth. Again, it's not quite yellow and it's not quite white. It's a good base coat for our teeth for us to start with before we start griming them up. Look at them chompers. Also trying my best to get the inside of the mouth as well. Next, we're going to take some of this shade and then apply it to the teeth. Again, we want to help grime and yellow this up. We don't want our teeth to look all sparkly white. We want them to look all rotten and gross. And finally, it's time to remove the tape around the eyes so that we can get to work on making those shine. It's really hard to see, but there are two distinct sculpted pupils in there as well. So I'm going to be using this white Citadel paint to brush that on very lightly. Again, don't want this to stand out too much. I also have some of this glow in the dark powder that I'm going to try and mix in with some of the paints so that I can apply those and get that little bit of a neon glowing effect to the eyes for this zombie bust. So again, very, very carefully trying to apply this as best I can, using a hairdryer to help dry that off, and then decided to use a little bit of Elgu's translucent resin so I could paint that directly on the eyes so it gives that nice little liquid glossy effect that eyes have. And then also decided I'm going to paint this inside the mouth, on the teeth and on the tongue and on the back side of the mouth as well, and using a UV pen to cure all of the resin. My desktop here is an absolute mess as well, but the end results are looking absolutely amazing, and it's time to get this assembled. There is our zombie Captain America bust. This is one fun project that I was able to go through and actually 3D print and paint. I'm really trying to hone in on my skills when it comes to actually finishing some of the things that I'm 3D printing. So please let me know in the comments what you thought about this style of video, things that I could improve, or just in general if you enjoyed it or not. This was a really fun project for me, and for sure we'll be looking at doing a few more of these here in the near future. And again, this amazing file was created by IR Sculpts and is available for you to download for free over on Cults 3D. Thanks again to IR Sculpts for creating this amazing, beautiful, freaky looking Captain America zombie bust based on the Marvel What Ifs TV series. Also, a huge thank you again to Elgu for sponsoring today's video. If you're interested in any of the Elgu products that I've shown off in today's video, you'll find links for those down in the description below. Also, a big thank you to all my Patreon supporters. If you're interested in finding out more information about my Patreon, how you can help support me in the channel here, make videos like this, you'll find links to that in the description below. Hey, thanks again for watching, you guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.